The night everything changed, Israel strikes Iran. The Middle East was once again thrown into chaos on June 13, 2025. Around 3 a.m., dozens of Israeli warplanes took off and headed directly for Iranian territory. Their targets were crystal clear: nuclear facilities, military bases, and intelligence centers spread across Iran. The operation, named Rising Lion, involved over 200 Israeli fighter jets, and was one of the most ambitious airstrikes in the region's history. According to Israeli sources, intelligence gathered over several months revealed that Iran had reached an irreversible stage in its nuclear weapons program, especially at the Natanz and Fordow nuclear sites. This prompted Israel to act preemptively, fearing that diplomatic channels had been exhausted. The operation was not just a simple air raid. Mossad played a critical role, reportedly weakening Iranian defense systems through internal sabotage, signal disruptions, and even disabling key radar and communication systems. Stealth F-35 fighter jets, equipped with advanced electronic warfare capabilities and long-range JDAM bombs, penetrated deep into Iranian airspace. Explosions rocked several major cities, including Tehran, Tabriz, Hamadan, Kermanshah, Isfahan, and Natanz. Some of the most strategic military installations and command centers were hit, including the Revolutionary Guard's headquarters and key missile production complexes. Israeli drones such as the Harop and Yatin models were also deployed for real-time surveillance and precision strikes. According to Israeli officials, more than 1,000 targets were hit in the first wave alone, using over 330 precision bombs. As the world watched in shock, Iranian officials declared the attack an open act of war. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian promised a powerful response, while Supreme Leader Khamenei vowed that Israel would not escape unpunished. The stage was now set for an explosive escalation unlike anything seen before. Just hours after the initial Israeli strikes, Iran began its counteroffensive. The Revolutionary Guards announced they had launched over 100 drones toward Israel. Later, ballistic missiles followed, in an operation Iran dubbed the Real Promise 3. Multiple missiles struck the heart of Tel Aviv, severely damaging key infrastructure. The Israeli Ministry of Defense building was hit twice, and the famous Weizmann Scientific Institute suffered significant destruction. Iran claimed it had launched 150 ballistic missiles in this wave alone, targeting Israeli cities like Jerusalem, Haifa, and Tel Aviv. Throughout June 13 and 14, both sides exchanged heavy fire. Iranian air defense systems tried to intercept incoming Israeli attacks, but many key facilities continued to take damage. Meanwhile, Israeli forces kept striking Iran's nuclear facilities, oil refineries, and energy infrastructures, including the South Pars gas field and vital military sites around Tehran. By the end of the second day, Iranian sources reported over 138 dead and more than 340 wounded, while Israel announced 3 fatalities and 172 injuries on their side. As tensions reached a boiling point, Iraq and Jordan closed their airspace, fearing the conflict could spill over into neighboring countries. The situation continued to escalate dangerously. As June 15th arrived, the third day of full-scale fighting began, with Iran launching more advanced ballistic missiles, including their Haif and long-range systems. Explosions were reported across multiple Israeli cities, while Mossad reportedly continued sabotage missions deep inside Iran. On June 15th, Iranian forces launched yet another wave of missile strikes, this time hitting targets around Tel Aviv, Haifa and Jerusalem. The strikes were more intense than ever, demonstrating Iran's ability to bypass some of Israel's advanced air defense systems, including the Iron Dome. The situation grew even more alarming when reports surfaced that missiles had struck an oil refinery in Haifa and damaged energy and infrastructures both in Israel and Iran. Explosions continued throughout Tehran, while fires broke out at the Shahran oil facility. In a bold and highly symbolic move, Iran reportedly targeted and struck the residence of Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Although Israel did not officially confirm the damage, the Iranian media broadcasted the news widely. The death toll continued to rise. By the end of the third day, Iran reported 130 dead and over 350 wounded, while Israel confirmed 13 fatalities and more than 380 injuries. The conflict had reached levels not seen before, with both nations suffering significant losses. International actors closely monitored the conflict. The United States, according to President Trump, had prior knowledge of the Israeli attack but did not directly participate. Trump, in his latest statement, said, "I have stopped wars before. I will stop this one too. Iran and Israel will reach an agreement after this conflict." Despite heavy losses on both sides, Israel continued to claim strategic advantage. Its F-35s had effectively neutralized much of Iran's air defense network and achieved deep strikes up to 1,000 kilometers into Iranian territory. Mossad's internal sabotage operations had also severely crippled Iran's conventional military response. As tensions remained dangerously high, both military and political analysts warned that any further escalation could destabilize not only the region, but the global economy as well. What happens next remains deeply uncertain. But one thing is clear: the Middle East has entered a dangerous and unprecedented chapter. As the conflict escalated into its fourth day, the regional balance of power began to shift. Iran activated its proxy allies across the Middle East. Forces like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hashd al-Shaabi in Iraq, the Zainabiyun, a brigade in Syria, and the Houthis in Yemen were all put on high alert. Missile and drone attacks originating from southern Lebanon and western Syria targeted northern Israeli cities. Haifa, Nahariya, and parts of the Golan Heights witnessed continuous strikes, forcing thousands of Israeli citizens to take shelter for days. Meanwhile, Israeli air defenses intercepted dozens of incoming missiles, but some managed to penetrate, causing localized damage. The Houthis, based in Yemen, publicly declared their full support for Iran, accusing Israel of manufacturing a false sense of victory and hiding its own military failures. In the Red Sea, Israeli and allied warships increased patrols to prevent possible Houthi missile or drone attacks on commercial shipping lanes. In Iraq, the political situation grew tense. Pro-Iranian militias began mobilizing, raising fears of a possible expansion of the war into Iraqi territory. Jordan, deeply concerned about the proximity of missile exchanges, kept its airspace closed and urged both sides to de-escalate. At the same time, inside Iran, anti-Israel protests erupted across major cities. Chants of revenge and defiance echoed in Tehran, Mossad, and Isfahan. State television broadcast images of massive crowds waving flags, vowing to destroy Israel and support Iran's leadership. International diplomatic efforts, led by the United Nations, European Union, and Russia, pushed for an immediate ceasefire. However, both sides remained defiant, unwilling to back down as each sought to gain a stronger position before any potential negotiations. By the fifth day, the full scale of destruction had become apparent. Iranian media reported over 180 fatalities and more than 400 injuries. Israel confirmed 20 deaths and nearly 500 wounded on its side. Civilian areas in both nations were increasingly affected as military targets became scarce. Amid the continued bombardments, U.S. military advisors quietly arrived in Israel to provide logistical support for Israel's ongoing strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, particularly the heavily fortified Fordow facility. Washington publicly insisted it was not directly involved in the conflict, but behind the scenes, coordination had intensified. The most shocking moment came when Iranian missiles reportedly targeted sensitive areas in central Tel Aviv, causing significant property damage. One missile even came dangerously close to the Knesset building. though it was intercepted at the last moment by Israel's Iron Beam defense system. Inside Israel, public pressure mounted on Prime Minister Netanyahu. Protesters took to the streets, accusing the government of escalating the situation for political survival. Meanwhile, Supreme Leader Khamenei delivered a chilling televised address. This Zionist regime has written its own end. We will endure, they will fall. Despite the heated rhetoric, back-channel talks began between Iran, Israel, and mediators from Turkey and Qatar. A temporary ceasefire proposal was floated to allow humanitarian aid into heavily damaged cities on both sides. On June 18th, after nearly a week of intense warfare, an uneasy silence finally settled over the region. Both countries declared victory. Iran boasted of standing its ground against overwhelming force, while Israel claimed it had successfully crippled Iran's nuclear infrastructure and military capability. But beneath the surface, nothing was truly resolved. Both nations remained on high alert, their militaries watching each other's every move. The world now faced the terrifying reality that any small spark could reignite the flames of anywhere. The Middle East, once again, stood on the fragile edge of disaster.